The restaurant glittered with soft gold light and quiet money crystal glasses resting on white linen, low conversations drifting like smoke. A piano in the corner playing something slow that did not demand attention only filled the silence between people who had run out of things to say. Isabella Moretti sat at the corner table near the window, back straight, hands folded lightly in her lap, dark hair swept over one shoulder, a black dress that fit her like it had been made for that chair, for that night, for the man who should have been sitting across from her. The chair opposite her was empty. Two place settings, two glasses, one deep red napkin folded untouched. She glanced at the clock on the far wall. The numbers were soft and elegant. They did not shout, but the message still burned in her chest. 40 minutes late again. The waiter came over with that careful politeness reserved for important guests. Madam, would you like to order now? She forced a smile, the one she had learned in this life. Polished and weightless. I will wait. The waiter nodded and retreated, leaving her alone with the flicker of the candle and the quiet ache sitting where her appetite should have been. Outside the window, the harbor lights shimmered against the black water. Boats rocked gently at their moorings, a world that moved even when men thought they owned it. She thought about the way Luca had promised her the night before. No phones, no meetings, no deals, just us. He had said it over coffee in the kitchen that morning, barefoot in his black shirt sleeves, tattoos peeking at his wrists. When he reached for the sugar, she had wanted to believe him so much that it hurt. A shadow fell across the table. Luca Marino slid into the chair opposite her with the easy grace of a man who knew he owned more than the room. Dark suit, open collar, eyes like deep water that had seen too much. He looked at her for a long moment as if memorizing her face, then let out a breath that could have been a laugh. You are early. She raised an eyebrow. You are late. No sharpness, no raised voice, just quiet disappointment that somehow cut deeper. He glanced toward the bar where two of his men pretended to be ordinary customers, jackets open enough to hide the weight of a gun, eyes scanning the room. We had a problem at the docks. He said, a shipment, wrong numbers, wrong faces. There is always a problem at the docks. She answered, there is always a shipment. There is not always a dinner with your wife. The word wife landed between them, heavy and fragile. He watched her with that measured calm that made other men nervous, but she was no other man. I am here now. She held his gaze. Are you? The pianist shifted into another slow melody. A birthday was being sung at the far end of the room. Someone laughed too loudly. It all felt like it was happening in another world. She remembered when being across from him at a table like this had felt like the center of the universe, when he had told her about dreams that did not involve guns and docks and money. That smelled like fear. A small house somewhere quiet, a dog that would bark at the mail, ridiculous details that had made her fall in love with a man who still believed he could step out of his own shadow, but shadows had a way of clinging. The waiter returned. Are you both ready to order? Luca handed the menu back without looking the usual. He said. Isabella shook her head. I am not hungry. The waiter glanced at Luca, waiting for the real answer. Whatever the lady wants, Luca said, voice smooth, eyes never leaving hers. The waiter left again and silence settled over the table. Isabella traced the edge of the water glass with one finger. Did you mean it? Mean what you said this morning, that tonight would be different, that you wanted us? Luca leaned back, one arm draped casually along the back of the chair, the pose easy, the tension in his jaw not so easy. I do want us. She looked at the empty space between their plates. It does not feel like it. He opened his mouth to speak, then his phone buzzed on the table screen, lighting up with an unlisted number that only a few people possessed. His eyes flicked down just once, and she saw it, the shift in his posture, the way his shoulders tightened, the way the room around them disappeared behind the glass of his attention. Do not answer it, she said quietly. His hand hovered over the phone. It could be nothing, then let it be nothing. He hesitated. One heartbeat, two. The phone buzzed again, a third time. There are calls you let go, she thought, and there are calls you take, even if it costs you everything. He picked up Luca. He listened, face going blank the way it always did when he stepped fully into the world. She could never see a world of coded words and unsaid threats. She watched his eyes, not his mouth. I will be there. He ended the call. No apology, no explanation, just a verdict. Isabella leaned back in her chair, felt the distance between them expand like a crack in glass. You are leaving. There was no question in it. Something is happening at Harbor 21. He said, I need to handle it. Harbor 21, the private dock, the place deals were made and broken. She clenched her hands in her lap to keep from shaking. I thought that was why you had men, so you did not have to run every time someone whispers. He looked at her with something like regret. There are things I cannot send other men to do. And there are things you should not expect your wife to endure, she replied. He looked at her like he wanted to say something soft, something real, but the words tangled in the web of obligation strangling him. I will not be long. You always say that. She could feel the eyes of the room on them, not openly but in stolen glances. People who knew his name more than his face, people who felt the heat that moved when he did. He rose from the chair. Wait here, eat. I will come back. Isabella stared at him. I am not a child. You leave at the table. His expression hardened just a fraction, the boss surfacing over the husband. This is for your safety. Safety. The word tasted bitter. The Men at the bar stood ready to shadow him out. Luca reached into his pocket and placed his black card on the table. Order whatever you want. It was not about the food. She did not touch the card. He took one slow breath, eyes sweeping her face, memorizing something for later, for a future that had not yet cracked. Then he turned and walked toward the door, his men falling in step behind him. The maitre d' bowed slightly. Other patrons made room without knowing why. The doors opened and closed, and Isabella Moretti was alone. The candle flickered. The empty chair stared back at her. The piano kept playing for people who still believed tonight would end the way they planned. She waited 5 minutes. 10:20. The waiter came back. Would you like me to reheat anything? She shook her head. A couple near the window whispered. She caught fragments. She is still here. Maybe he is not coming back. 15 more minutes crawled by, every tick of the hidden clock pinning her to the seat. Finally, something inside her snapped. She stood, the chair sliding softly across the floor. She placed her napkin on the table, left the card where he had tossed it. On her way out, the waiter tried to speak. Madam. She gave him a small smile that did not reach her eyes. He will pay. The foyer of the restaurant was quiet, polished stone, soft lights. A hostess with perfect posture outside. The night had cooled. The harbor wind carrying salt and diesel, and the distant hum of ships. Luca's car was not hard to spot, a sleek black machine parked at the curb beneath a street lamp. It looked like a panther resting, but the usual detail was missing. No men leaning against the hood pretending to smoke, no quiet conversation in earpieces, no shadow presence at all. The sidewalk was empty. That was wrong. Isabella's steps slowed, her heels ticking softly against the pavement. The hair on the back of her neck prickled. Luca never left her car without eyes on it, never left her exposed in public, never. She scanned the street, a couple laughing as they walked past, a cyclist cutting through the intersection, a taxi idling at the corner. Too normal. Her gaze dropped to the hood of the car. A single envelope rested there, white, unmarked edges perfectly straight. Her stomach turned to ice. She looked around again. No one watched overtly, no one pointed. She picked up the envelope with numb fingers, the paper thick and expensive, her name written in an unfamiliar hand. Her heart thudded against her ribs. Inside, she already knew whatever waited would change everything. She slid a nail under the flap and pulled it open. A photograph slipped out. First glossy, sharp, fresh. Luca on his knees in some dim warehouse, hands bound behind his back, blood at the corner of his mouth. A man behind him holding a gun to the back of his head, face blurred by shadow under the photograph. A single line of text, Harbor 21, alone, 1 hour. Her breath caught. No demand, no explanation, no number to call, just a location and the promise hanging between the words, come or he dies. She gripped the photo so tightly the edges bit into her palm. The street tilted for a moment, the restaurant behind her already feeling like a memory, a place that belonged to another life. Someone brushed past her on the sidewalk, murmuring an apology. She did not see their face. Her eyes were on the harbor lights in the distance, where the dark water waited, where men like Luca made deals with devils, and someone had decided that tonight she would be part of the bargain. The harbor wind struck her face like cold warning as Isabella moved toward the water, the city behind her glowing with careless beauty, the streets humming with life, completely unaware that her world was cracking open with every step she took. Harbor 21 sat at the edge of the city, a stretch of rusted metal fences, dark warehouses, old cranes swaying like tired giants, and water black enough to swallow secrets. Men like Luca made their empires here in the shadows between shipments, where deals were sealed in silence, money and blood moving with equal rhythm. Isabella had never come here alone, never without Luca's hand on the small of her back guiding her with quiet care, never at night when the harbor turned into something alive, something watching. The closer she got, the fewer people she saw. Pedestrians faded, cars disappeared, lights dimmed until only the distant echo of waves remained. She reached the chain-link fence separating the public walkway from the private docks. The gate that was usually guarded stood slightly open, an invitation or a trap, maybe both. She hesitated, eyes drifting to the photograph in her hand. Luca on his knees, face half in shadow, bruised, exhausted, defeated. It did not look staged, it looked real, too real. Someone had gotten close enough to touch him, close enough to break him. She stepped through the gate, forcing her breath to stay steady, even as her pulse thundered. Her footsteps echoed across the wooden planks of the dock, each one swallowed by the dark. Her heels clicked softly, then fell silent when she reached the edge of the pier, where the boards felt older, softer, almost hollow beneath her weight. Ahead, the warehouse loomed tall and silent, windows blacked out, doors shut tight, a single bulb flickering above the entrance, casting a pool of sickly yellow light that barely touched the cold night air. The envelope instructions were simple: Harbor 21, alone, 1 hour. She arrived early. She always arrived early. As she approached the warehouse, she saw movement, a shadow shifting, then stepping forward into the half-light. Her breath caught, not because she recognized him, but because she recognized the way he carried himself, calm, slow, deliberate, the way men walked when they felt untouchable. Nico Valera. He had been Luca's right hand for years, always quiet, always composed, loyal to a fault, or so Luca believed. His dark hair pushed back, his coat heavy, his eyes flat as winter glass. Isabella stopped a few feet away, fingers tightening on the photograph. Nico. He nodded once, as if greeting her at a dinner table instead of at the edge of a trap. Mrs. Marino, the way he said it made her skin crawl. Stripped of warmth, stripped of respect, a title instead of a connection. Where is he? She asked. Nico tilted his head slightly, studying her. He is inside, though. I am surprised you came without calling your security, without making a scene. You told me to come alone. And you listened, he said quietly. Intriguing anger burned in her chest. I do not care about your games, just show me Luca. Nico smiled, small, sharp. You will see him. She stared at him, the pieces shifting into place slowly, painfully. You did this? His smile widened slightly. I did. Why? Nico took a step closer, his voice low enough that only the sea could overhear. Because Luca Marino forgot his place. He forgot the rules. He thought he could leave the business. He thought he could walk away with you, start somewhere new, clean his hands as if they were ever clean. He forgot who built this empire for him. He forgot who kept him alive. Her heart thudded. You are doing this because he wanted to leave. Nico shrugged. Because he wanted to leave with you. You made him weak. She stepped forward, heat rising in her throat. Don't you dare blame me for your betrayal. He raised an eyebrow, calm, almost amused. Betrayal is such a dramatic word. He was never fit to lead. He hesitated too much. He thought too long. He loved too deeply. He was becoming predictable, and predictable men die quickly in this world. Her voice trembled. He saved your life more than once, and this is how he repays me. Nico replied softly, by throwing away everything we built. She felt something cold settle in her stomach. What do you want? Nico stepped aside, slowly revealing the warehouse door behind him. I want to show you what your husband has done to himself. The door creaked as he pushed it open. The smell inside hit her immediately. Metal, oil, damp wood, and something darker, something she did not want to name. He motioned for her to enter. She hesitated. Go on, Nico murmured. You came for him, didn't you? She stepped forward and darkness swallowed her. The flickering bulb behind her shrinking, her shadow stretching long across the floor as the door shut with a heavy thud, locking out the city lights. The space inside was vast, silent except for the drip of water and the distant hum of generators. Then she saw him, Lucas' silhouette tied to a metal chair near the center of the warehouse, his wrists bound behind him, shoulders slumped, head lowered, hair sticking to the dried blood along his cheek. He looked smaller, somehow stripped of his power, stripped of his armor, the man who could silence a room with one glance now sat broken beneath a single hanging lamp. Isabella's breath caught in her throat. Luca, his head lifted slightly at the sound of her voice, his eyes unfocused, then sharpness returned slowly, painfully. Isabella, his voice was rough, weaker than she had ever heard it. She moved toward him, but Nico placed a hand on her shoulder, blocking her path. Not yet. Her jaw tightened. Let me go to him. Nico lowered his face near hers. Do you think he would want you to see him like this? She shoved his hand off, stepping closer to Luca. Anyway, he tried to straighten in the chair, muscles tense, even in pain. Isabella, what are you doing here? She showed him the photograph. Someone wanted me to. He closed his eyes briefly. Damn it, they should not have involved you. Nico clapped once, breaking the moment. There it is, love makes fools of us all. Isabella turned to him, fire burning behind her eyes. What do you want from us? Nico paced slowly, hands behind his back like a man strolling through a museum of other people's tragedies. I want control. I want the business I helped build. I want the respect I was owed for years while Luca played at being a good husband. Isabella's voice sharpened. You could have taken it without dragging me into this. Nico looked at her with something close to admiration, but that would not hurt him enough. Luca jerked against the ropes, voice jagged. You do this, you take the throne, and you will not last a week. The Russians will tear you apart before you even sit down. Nico smirked. Then why not let your wife help me? Silence crashed through the warehouse. What? Nico gestured around the room. The rival families have a meeting tomorrow to decide who gets control of the East Docks. They will expect Luca Marino to speak, but Luca Marino will be too indisposed. Isabella stepped back. No. Nico stepped forward. Yes. She shook her head, voice low, trembling. You want me to pretend to speak for him? He tilted his head. Not pretend. Convince them that Luca supports my leadership, then they will fall in line and his empire will be mine. Luca strained against the ropes. Nico, you are making a mistake. Nico snapped his fingers sharply and two masked men emerged from the shadows, stepping closer, weapons visible, one aimed lazily at Luca's chest, the other at the floor, but in easy reach. Nico's voice softened dangerously. I want her to deliver one message on my behalf, and in return she gets you back alive. Isabella looked at Luca, bruised, exhausted, helpless. For the first time since she had known him, she felt her heartbeat pound painfully against her ribs. What message? Nico smiled, telling the families Luca Marino chooses me. Her stomach twisted. And if I refuse? Nico's voice fell to a whisper. Then Luca Marino will disappear into the water quietly. Only the tide will know his grave. Luca breathed sharply. Isabella, do not do this. Do not trust him. Nico leaned close to Luca, almost gently. She will do it because she loves you more than you ever deserved. Isabella's eyes filled, burning, but she blinked the tears back, refusing to let either man see her break. She looked at Nico, voice steady even as her heart cracked. What happens after the meeting? Nico smiled slowly. Oh, after that you go home, both of you alive, if you are lucky, both alive if lucky. She knew a lie when she heard one. She had been married to Luca Marino long enough to sense when death stood nearby. Still, Nico said calmly, you will come with my men to the meeting tomorrow. You will walk in as Luca's wife, and you will speak for him. And you will say exactly what I tell you to say or he dies tonight. She felt Luca's eyes on her heavy with fear and rage and guilt. Isabella, do not do this. She looked at him, she looked at Nico, she looked at the gun trained loosely on Luca, and she made the only choice she could. I will do it. Nico's expression flickered with satisfaction. Good. She stepped closer to Luca, ignoring the gun, the men, the fear. She lowered her voice, whispering only for him, this is not over. I will not lose you. His eyes burned. Isabella, no. She leaned down, her forehead touching his for a second, her breath trembling. I am not choosing him, I am choosing you. His hands flexed uselessly against the ropes. Just stay alive, she whispered. Stay alive until tomorrow. Nico snapped his fingers again. The men grabbed Luca, dragging the chair backward into deeper shadow. Luca's voice rough. Isabella, do not trust him. Do not believe anything he promises. Do not. His voice was swallowed by darkness. Nico turned to her and said softly, tomorrow will decide everything for both of you. He opened the warehouse door, letting in a slice of cold harbor light. Go home, Mrs. Marino, rest. You will need it. She stepped out into the night, her legs shaking, her mind spinning, the door shutting behind her with a thud that sounded like a judge's final verdict. The harbor wind cut through her dress, the photograph still in her hand, the edges bent now and trembling like her fingers. She started walking away from Pier 21 toward a city that had unknowingly shifted into a war zone because of the man she loved and the man who betrayed him. And as she walked, a single thought burned through her, louder than the waves, louder then the fear. If Nico wanted a puppet tomorrow, she would give him something else entirely. Isabella walked through the sleeping city without seeing any of it. The streetlights blurred into streaks of gold and white, the cars passing like distant ghosts, her breath shallow, her hands cold, her mind racing faster than her steps. Nico thought he owned the board, that he had cornered her, that she would walk into that meeting like a trembling pawn and hand him the empire on a silver platter. He thought fear would break her, that love would cage her, that desperation would make her obedient. But he had forgotten one thing: she was married to Luca Marino, the man who taught her how to read lies in a heartbeat, how to listen for the truth inside silence, how to stay calm when a gun pressed into her back, how to survive when the darkness closed in. She was not fragile, she was furious. As she reached the apartment, her legs finally gave out. She leaned against the kitchen counter, sliding to the floor, the photograph slipping out of her hand. She picked it up, staring at Luca, tied, beaten, eyes fierce. Even in pain, he was alive because she had said yes, he would stay alive only if she played this perfectly. What Nico wanted was simple: get the families to believe Luca had chosen him, get them to accept his leadership. But Isabella knew something he did not know. She had spent years watching Luca deal with these men, watching their power, their fear, their egos. She knew how they thought, she knew what they valued, she knew what they hated, and she knew that Nico would never control them. He did not inspire loyalty, he inspired convenience, and convenience dies fast. She stood, pushing herself off the floor, wiping her face with the back of her hand. She needed a plan, a real one, something bold enough to save Luca, subtle enough not to alert Nico, something that used the one weapon he underestimated: her mind. She walked into Luca's office, the one room she rarely entered. The air smelled like aged whiskey, tobacco, imported leather, and the faint trace of his cologne. She ran her fingers across the shelves, the files, the photographs hidden beneath them, snapshots of a life. He wanted to escape, a life he wanted to rebuild with her. She bit her lip hard, focusing. She opened the drawer he always kept locked and found what she prayed would be there: his ledger, not the real one, the one he showed his men, but the private one, the one he used to keep track of the alliances, the debts, the favors owed, the secrets. She flipped through the pages, scanning names, codes, symbols. Luca had explained them to her once on a long night after a fight, when he had wanted to show her she mattered enough for his truth. She stopped at a name circled twice: Familia Serrano. Her breath caught. The Serranos were old blood, ruthless but honorable in a way only criminals understood. Luca had saved their eldest son during a botched deal 2 years ago. They owed him. They were the only family powerful enough to counter Nico if she approached them right, but Nico would be watching her. He would track her every move. He had men on every corner. She needed to disappear without disappearing, needed to move without leaving tracks. She picked up Luca's phone from the drawer, dead battery, old device he had forgotten to throw out. She plugged it in, waited until the faint glow appeared. She typed a single message to a number labeled only with an S: midnight, urgent. She grabbed her coat, left the apartment quietly, and walked to a small coffee shop open 24 hours. She sat near the back, ordered nothing, waited. The minutes felt like hours, until the door opened and a woman slipped inside, wearing a hood, black gloves, a scarf pulled up high over her face. She approached the table slowly, then lowered the scarf, revealing Sofia Serrano, her sharp eyes gleaming under the dim lights. Isabella Moretti, she whispered quietly. I never thought you would call me. Isabella leaned in, her voice low. Luca is in danger, and I am out of time. Sofia's expression tightened. Nico, yes. Sofia's jaw clenched. What do you need? Isabella breathed slowly, choosing her words carefully. Tomorrow there is a meeting. The families will gather. They will expect Luca. Nico wants me to speak for him, to announce his new leadership. Sofia's eyes narrowed. And you want to sabotage him. I want to save my husband. Sophia studied her face, searching for weakness, for lies, for fear, but all she found was steel. What is your plan? She asked. Isabella placed both hands on the table, steady as stone. Nico wants me to prove Luca supports him, but I want the Serranos to appear at the meeting unannounced. I want you to question the legitimacy of Nico's claim in front of everyone. Force him to reveal his cards before he is ready. Sophia frowned. That will cause chaos. Good, Isabella whispered. Chaos means confusion. Confusion means moments, and moments are all I need to get Luca out. Sophia sat back thinking silently, then asked the question that mattered most. What do you want from us? Just one thing, Isabella said. Come armed, but do not fire unless Nico fires first. This cannot look like a coup. It must look like doubt. Sophia exhaled slowly. You are braver than I thought. Isabella shook her head. I am desperate. Sophia stood, pulling her scarf up again. We will be there tomorrow, but remember, once it begins there will be no going back. I know, Isabella whispered. When Sophia left the cafe, Isabella stayed seated, her hands trembling now that the plan was no longer just an idea but a living thing breathing beside her. She walked back home, carefully watching for Nico's men, but no one followed. Nico was arrogant enough to believe she would obey. He thought her loyalty to Luca made her predictable. He thought love made her weak. He had no idea love could be a weapon sharper than a blade. Morning came, gray and cold, the sky heavy with unshed rain. Isabella dressed quietly in a simple black suit, hair tied back, face pale but steady. She looked at her reflection, and for the first time in months she saw herself not just Luca's wife but Luca Marino's equal. She left the apartment, walking to the address. Nico had given her a black car waiting, 2 men inside, masks on, guns visible. They opened the door silently. She slid into the back seat, her heartbeat steady. The car drove through the city, then the industrial district, then toward the abandoned cannery where the meeting would take place, the place where respect was traded and men died for honor. When they arrived, the parking lot was already filling with SUVs and sedans, drivers waiting with engines running, men in dark coats heading inside one by one. The building loomed over them, empty windows like staring eyes. The men escorted her in. The air smelled like dust and gun oil and old betrayal. The main hall had a long wooden table in the center, chairs surrounding it like thrones for wolves, candles flickering dim light across, men who had shaped entire eras of crime, each staring as she entered. Whispers cut the air like blades. Why is she here? Where is Luca? Is he dead? Who leads? What is happening? Then Nico entered, confident, calm, dressed like a king without a crown. He walked to the head of the table, smiling the kind of smile that wanted to be believed. Gentlemen, he began, Luca Marino has chosen to step down and pass the leadership to me. Voices erupted, doubt, anger, shock. Isabella stood behind Nico, her expression unreadable, but her hands curled tightly behind her back, her pulse thundering in her ears. Someone shouted loudly, then where is Luca? Let him speak for himself. Nico raised a hand calmly. He cannot be here, but his wife will deliver his wishes. All eyes turned to her. She felt fear crawl across her spine, but she anchored herself in the memory of Luca's voice the night he told her, never let a room of men make you small. She stepped forward slowly, the hall falling silent, every eye fixed on her, every breath heavy. She opened her mouth to speak just as the doors slammed open. The Serranos walked in, armed, silent shadows at their back, eyes sharp like steel, slicing through smoke. Chaos rippled through the table. Men stood, hands drifting toward weapons, curses filling the air. Nico stiffened, his jaw clenching. You were not invited. Sophia Serrano stepped forward, voice steady. We did not need an invitation when the truth is being buried. Isabella's heart pounded. This was the moment, the one she had built everything around, the moment she could use the chaos Nico feared most. In the space between one breath and the next, the power in the room shifted. The air crackled, and Isabella realized she had just taken the first step into a war that would end either with Luca alive beside her or with his blood on the floor, and her world turned to ash the moment the Serranos stepped fully into the room. The entire meeting twisted into something sharp and volatile. The air thickened, men reached for their jackets where guns slept, the candles guttered as if afraid of what was about to happen. Nico stood at the head of the table, shoulders tense, jaw tight, eyes dark with a rage he tried to hide but could not. The Serranos moved like a single living creature, organized, silent, dangerous. Sophia at the front, wearing a calmness that only people who had killed often could wear. Isabella stood behind Nico, her hands folded, her heart steady. She knew she had only moments before everything shattered. She watched the room, reading every face, every flicker, every breath. This was the world Luca had survived longer than anyone could understand, a world where loyalty weighed less than power and truth could be rewritten with a single bullet. The families murmured, whispering to one another, glancing at her, then at Nico, then at the Serranos. The balance of the entire East Coast seemed to tip on an invisible scale. Sophia's voice cut through the murmurs. Luca Marino made alliances with our family long before any of you were powerful enough to sit here tonight. We owe him respect, and we demand to know where he is and why he is not speaking for himself. Nico stepped forward, smiling tightly. Luca entrusted his decisions to me, a lie Isabella thought, a big one, and he hoped no one would challenge him, but Sophia Serrano was not a woman who feared men like Nico, and yet Nico took another step, his voice silk over poison. Luca has grown tired of this life. He has chosen to leave, and in his absence someone must take control for the good of all of us. A ripple of unease moved across the table. Sophia narrowed her eyes, then turned slowly to Isabella. Mrs. Marino, is this true? The room stilled. Every gaze burned through her. Isabella felt the weight of 1,000 futures pressing against her chest. This was the moment she had planned for, the moment to tilt the board, the moment to break the illusion Nico had been crafting. She stepped forward slowly, her heels sounding like thunder against concrete. Every man watched her, even Nico, his eyes narrowing, his hands curling at his sides. She stood beside the table, lifting her chin, her voice steady, even though her heart ached to tremble. Luca Marino would never abandon his people. The words landed like a crack of lightning. Men leaned forward, muscles tense, weapons inches from hands. Someone hissed, "That is not what Nico said." Another muttered, "The wife would know the truth." Another, "We do not trust Nico." Nico took a step toward her, voice low, "Dangerous. You were supposed to read the statement I gave you." She did not look at him. Instead, she looked at the room. "Luca Marino is missing," she said, calm as stone. "Someone took him, someone who stood close to him, someone who wanted his power." A roar of voices exploded through the hall, weapons raised, chairs shoved back, men shouting at once, "What is the meaning of this? Who took him? What lies are these? Where is Luca?" Nico slammed his hand on the table. "Enough." All eyes snapped to him. He glared at Isabella, his voice a knife. "I warned you." But Isabella turned toward the Serrano. She lifted the photograph from her coat and dropped it on the table, where it slid across the wood, stopping in front of the oldest Serrano brother. The image of Luca, tied, beaten, the gun at his head. Gasps rippled through the men. One voice broke through the noise. "Who did this?" Isabella turned to Nico slowly, deliberately, her eyes steady. "Ask him." The room froze. Every eye turned to Nico, some in shock, some in rage, some calculating. Nico's face remained expressionless, but something dark gleamed in his eyes. "You are playing a dangerous game." She stepped closer until her face was inches from his, her voice barely above a whisper, but sharp enough to cut. "I am not playing, Nico. I am ending you." The hall erupted in shouting again, but Nico raised his hand for silence, and he got it somehow. Even now men were afraid to cross him. He looked at Isabella with cold amusement. "You think you can win here? You think these men will believe you over me?" Sophia stepped between them. "No," she said, "they will believe the truth." And then all at once everything went quiet, too quiet. A sound, a click, light, shadows moving. Before anyone understood, masked men flooded through the side doors, weapons drawn, silencers gleaming. Nico's private soldiers. Men shouted, reaching for guns. Too late. Tables overturned, chairs flew, candles shattered, chaos exploded like a bomb. Nico stepped back calmly as bullets hissed through the air, targeting the families first, eliminating the ones he knew would never follow him. Bodies fell, shouting turned to screams. Gunfire flashed like lightning across the hall. Isabella dove behind the table, her breath scraping her throat, her heart wild. She crawled low, keeping her head down, splinters flying past her ear, men falling around her. The Serranos returning fire, more organized than the rest, bullets cracking through the air in relentless rhythm. Nico barked orders, his men advancing, forming a tight circle around him. He moved toward the exit, shouting, "Find her, kill her." Isabella felt panic clawing at her lungs, but she forced it down. She scanned the room, teeth clenched. Where was Luca? Where did they take him? Nico said Luca was still alive. She believed that. She felt it in her bones. She had come too far to lose now. Then she saw him through a crack in the chaos, through the overturned table, through the smoke. A door on the far side of the hall opening, 2 masked men dragging a chair, dragging Luca, still tied, still bleeding. Her breath froze there. He was alive, barely conscious, head hanging low, struggling to breathe. The men dragged him toward the back corridor, toward the docks behind the cannery, where no sound carried and no bodies were ever found. Nico was going to kill him tonight, bury him where the tide could hide the truth. She could not let that happen. Isabella shoved herself to standing, keeping low, her legs trembling, her ears ringing. She darted between fallen chairs, ducking behind columns, moving through smoke and gunfire, using every inch of cover she had. She moved like Luca taught her, slow, deliberate, silent, even as her heart hammered like a war drum. A Serrano soldier spotted her and yelled, "Mrs. Marino, go." She shook her head. "Luca is behind the hall. They are taking him to the docks. I have to get to him." The soldier nodded, firing over her head, creating a path. "Go now." She ran the hall behind her, burning with bullets and betrayal, but her world narrowed to one goal: reach Luca, reach him before Nico ended everything. She slipped through the side door into a narrow hallway, the cold air slamming into her, the walls vibrating with gunfire from the main room. She sprinted to the end where the door to the docks hung open, swaying in the wind. The night outside was black, the waves thrashing against the pier. 2 figures dragging Luca's chair toward the edge of the harbor. They were going to throw him in alive. Isabella's heart convulsed. She grabbed the nearest object, a rusted metal rod lying near a crate, her fingers closing around it. She moved silently behind them, the wind masking her steps. She raised the rod high, then struck with all the fury, drowning her chest. The first man went down, instantly crumpling to the ground. The second spun, grabbing her arm, shoving her back, her breath knocking out. Her chest slammed into a crate, pain shooting through her ribs. He lunged for her, gun raised. Luca found strength from somewhere primal and kicked hard, knocking the man off balance. Isabella seized the Moment grabbed the man's wrist, slammed it against the crate until the gun dropped, then she snatched it and without thinking pulled the trigger. The silence shot tore through the night, and the man fell silence, just the wind, just the waves, just her heartbeat shaking the air. Isabella dropped the gun, knees hitting the wood, her hands shaking as she reached Luca, his head lifting slowly, eyes glassy, unfocused. Isabella, she cupped his bruised face, tears finally breaking free. I am here, love, I am here. She hurried to untie the ropes, her fingers slipping, shaking. He winced but leaned into her touch. Nico tried to break you, she whispered, but he does not know you, Luca, he does not know us. His voice barely a breath. You should not be here. She smiled through tears. I think I was born for this moment. She freed his wrists. He sagged forward into her arms. She held him tight. He was burning cold, trembling but alive. Behind them, footsteps exploded into the night. Nico's men storming onto the dock, guns raised, torches slicing beams of light through the darkness, men shouting, there they are. Luca gripped her arm. Run, no, we run together. She hauled him to standing, his legs barely holding as the footsteps came closer, bullets about to fly the edge of the dock inches away. Then suddenly another sound cut through everything, sirens, dozens of them, police cars, SWAT trucks racing toward the cannery, lights flashing, blinding. The Serranos had called law enforcement to collapse the meeting. They intended to force Nico into exposure. No one expected a massacre, but the minute blood spilled, someone pulled a panic trigger. The entire city was descending onto the dock. Nico's men panicked, scattering, screaming, fire, flashing, bullets cracking into crates, into water, into shadows. Isabella pulled Luca behind a thick beam, shielding him, holding him as if her body could stop bullets. Luca breathed her name like a prayer. Isabella, she held his face between her hands. Don't you dare die on me, you hear me, don't you dare. His forehead pressed to hers, trembling. I love you. She broke inside, then stitched herself back together in the same breath. I love you too, and we are going to survive this. Behind them, chaos consumed the night, but ahead of them the sirens grew louder, lights brighter, men shouting, drop your weapons, this is the police, get on the ground. The world was moving toward collapse and splintering into 1,000 choices, but Isabella held Luca close, refusing to let go. And in that moment, as the night reached the edge of destruction, something shifted inside him, recognition that the empire he built could not survive this night, that everything he had been, everything he had controlled, everything he thought he could protect was gone. And what happened next, the truth, the loss, the price, would destroy him. The night tore itself apart in sirens and shouting, and the screech of boots pounding against concrete as police flooded the dock, men in black armor storming through the smoke, yelling commands, lights flashing across fallen bodies while the water crashed beneath the pier like a warning. Isabella held Luca upright, his arm around her shoulders, his weight nearly pulling her down, but she refused to let him fall, refused to let darkness claim him. Not after everything, not after the nights she spent waiting for him to come home, not after the moment she found him tied and bleeding, and still calling her name. Hide him, someone shouted, hide him now. The Serranos appeared from the shadows, Sophia running forward, gun lowered, grabbing Lucas' other arm, helping Isabella pull him toward cover, her voice sharp, we have to move before Nikos men reach us, or before the police do. Isabella nodded, her breath shaking. Luca leaned against both of them, his legs barely functioning, each step agony, his face pale, his eyes glassy but alive, so desperately alive. They ducked behind a stack of crates, bullets whistling past as Nikos' men fired blindly into the chaos. Luca coughed, blood staining his lip, but he forced himself to speak. Nico will kill everyone. He needs this meeting to end in blood. Sophia cursed, we need to get him out of here now. They moved quickly, weaving between containers, slipping behind steel beams, every second stretching tighter, every heartbeat a countdown to something final. Isabella felt Lucas' grip tightening on her shoulder, felt the tremor of pain ripping through him every time he tried to breathe. Then a shadow appeared ahead and her heart froze. Nico standing at the end of the pier, gun raised, face calm, eyes burning with betrayal. He looked at the three of them and shook his head slowly, almost sadly. I gave you a chance, Isabella. You could have walked away with your life, but you just had to be like him, stubborn, loyal, foolish. Isabella stepped in front of Luca, raising her hands even though they trembled. You will not touch him, Nico sneered. You think you can stop me? You think the Serranos will protect you? When this ends, they will not. You think Luca can survive after tonight? He is finished. You both are. Isabella didn't flinch, her voice steady. Luca Marino survives everything. Nico laughed, a broken, bitter sound. Not this. He raised the gun, and in that moment everything slowed. The ocean roared, the sirens screamed, the wind cut through them like ice. Time cracked open, a single gunshot split the air, but it didn't hit Luca, it didn't hit Isabella. Nico staggered, looked down, a bloom of red spreading across his coat. Behind him, Sophia Serrano lowered her smoking gun, her face carved in cold stone. Nico collapsed to the dock, eyes wide in disbelief. A man who had spent his whole life planning for betrayal but never believed it would come from the only family that once respected him. The echo of the gunshot faded, silence fell. It was over, but survival didn't come clean. As the police stormed the pier shouting orders, Luca sank to his knees, unable to stand any longer. Isabella knelt with him, holding his face between her hands, whispering over and over, you're safe, you're alive, stay with me, Luca, it's over. But Luca shook his head slowly, his voice rough, broken. No, it isn't. He looked at her With eyes full of love and regret they will arrest everyone here and if they find me I am done. Sophia glanced at him, then at Isabella, her voice low. He is right, he cannot be found here alive, not as Luca Marino. Isabella felt the world tilt. What are you saying, that he disappears tonight? Sophia answered, her voice steady. You leave before the police sweep this area, you take him and you run, you vanish, you do not contact anyone, do not look back. This empire is gone. Luca swallowed hard, his voice quiet. This is the only way, Bella. If they find me they will not just take me. They will take you too. I have to die tonight, at least officially. Isabella's breath caught, her eyes burning. She shook her head. No, we can fight this, we can rebuild, we can. He placed his hand over hers, weak, trembling. But sure, no, Bella, we cannot. I built something that should have never existed. I dragged you into a world you never deserved, and tonight the world dragged back. She leaned her forehead against his, tears spilling. You are not leaving me. His voice cracked. I am not leaving you, I am leaving the man I was. Sophia stepped forward, a plan already forming. We will say Nico executed him, his body lost in the water. The families will believe it, the police will believe it, the city will move on. It is the only way. Isabella closed her eyes, pain tearing through her like a blade. When she opened them Luca was watching her with something softer than any love he had ever shown her. Choice, not command, never again command. She nodded once. He exhaled a long shaking breath, relief and heartbreak mixing in. The same moment Sophia guided them toward a hidden path behind the cannery where a boat waited, small unmarked engines, quiet, the kind used to slip across borders unnoticed. Isabella helped Luca inside the boat, holding him as he shivered, calling his name until he steadied, holding her back, whispering, I am here, Bella, I am here. The boat started moving, cutting through the black water, pulling them away from the burning docks, away from the sirens, away from the empire collapsing behind them. Luca leaned his head against her chest, eyes heavy, breath uneven. She held him tight, her fingers in his hair, whispering, you are safe, you are safe, you are safe. He whispered against her skin, I am destroyed, Bella. Everything I built, everything I was is gone. She kissed his forehead, her voice breaking. Then we will build something new, just you and me somewhere. The world is quiet. They vanished into the darkness, the city shrinking, the past dissolving, and Luca Marino, the Mafia boss who ruled an empire, who survived men stronger and colder and more violent than him, died that night. But the man who remained, the man who loved Isabella Moretti more than power, more than blood, more than himself, lived. And that man, shattered and remade, would build a life with her, far from the streets that once bowed to his name. What happened next destroyed him, but it also saved him. Thank you all for staying with us through this powerful story of love, loyalty, and the heavy price of choices. If this journey between Luca and Isabella touched you even a little, tell me in the comments where you are watching from, which country, which city. Your support means everything, and it helps us keep creating stories that stay with you long after the video ends. Remember, sometimes losing everything is the only way to save what truly matters. See you in the next story.